you could introduce yourself, birth date, where you come from, and then I'll start asking you questions.
You ask me questions, or how do we do?
Well, first just introduce yourself.
Yes.
No, my name is Kaethe Ritter. I'm from Vienna, Austria. I was born in January 1st, 1913, etc.
If you do that now, please, just go right ahead.
Okay. I'm Kaethe Ritter. I'm born in Vienna in 1st January 1913. I was born Kaethe Ritter, but when I came over here, I changed it to Catherine. I was living in Czechoslovakia after the Anschluss, and from there I went to different concentration lagers, etc.
Catherine, could you please tell me a little bit about your family background? Members of your family?
I lost my father as a very small child. My father went voluntarily in the First World War. When the war broke out in that time, Austria-Hungarian, he was supposed to come on his first leave home. Unfortunately, he came in a cholera-infested bed and didn't make it. At that time, I was about 1.5 years, and my two brothers were 7 and 8 years, and my mother had to bring us up on her own. We were very close always. My brothers thought, now they are like the men of the house, and they have to take care of my mother and myself. I had a very nice time as a young girl in Vienna. No big problems. We were not very rich, but we were comfortable. We worked all three after we had our schooling. I learned to be a dressmaker in Vienna. It was called the Schneider Academy, and both my brothers went to high school and then to a commercial course. We were quite successful. We lived very nice life till Hitler came to Austria. We never changed our Czech citizenship, and natural, logical thing was for us to go back to Czechoslovakia. My mother went at first to Prague and found an apartment, and when everything was settled, we hired a moving van from Czechoslovakia, which took everything over. But it didn't last too long. After another year, Hitler followed us. My brothers went away. They went from Prague to Italy, and my older brother joined in France the Czech army and went with the Czech army to England. My younger brother like my brothers are just 1 year apart, but we always refer to them, the older and the younger one. He went to Portugal, and from Portugal he went to the States. And there he joined the American Army, and both my brothers met in London. It was quite a reunion.
When was this reunion?
That was, I guess, when America joined the war. I don't know which year it was.
41.
41, 42,
Something like that.
Something,
Early
early
42.
40s.
Okay.
And at that time, like when I was in Prague, I lived with my mother and my grandmother. I married in Prague a fellow who was from Birkenau. And when the transport started to go, at first people were sent to Poland, and there was a big, everybody tried to leave Europe to go to the States or wherever they had a chance. I had quite a few relatives already in the States, which emigrated partly from Vienna and also some from Czechoslovakia. And they all tried to send me visas. I remember I got visas for little places on that continent here. Was Dominican Republic, and my mother, it was very hard for me to make a decision. We lived with my grandmother, and my mother said it's impossible to take her mother along for such a journey, and she couldn't leave her. And I felt I couldn't leave my mother. And my husband at that, he had already a brother in Cuba, and he tried to get a visa for myself, my mother, and my grandmother, and him, for the whole family, but we never got it. The first person who was sent to Thereseinstadt was my grandmother. She didn't realize at first what was happening to her. We couldn't do nothing. I must say, fortunately, she didn't stay. She wasn't alive long enough in Thereseinstadt. When my mother was sent about a couple of weeks later, and when she came there, my grandmother was already dead. And I went with my first husband, I think it was August 42. And that was a group of young men who were supposed, it was called Bahnbau, to build railway tracks from Thereseinstadt to the next bigger place. What else?
Could you tell me a little bit about your educational background? You said you were in the Schneider Academy for how many years was it?
That was for 2 years. Like I had like a junior high, and after that I went for 2 years, and with that I worked in a fancy lady wear store, and then I worked in an outfit. They manufactured knitted things. Vienna was quite famous for knitwear, and we had a fairly good line, and it was we dealt with England and all kinds of customers came from the whole world to buy stuff in that outfit where I worked, and I enjoyed working there. I was responsible for the different dressmakers who each dressmaker made 1 or 2 garments for and they made the collections, and when that stuff came I had to control it and see that everything was done the way we expected it, how it should look. And then I worked in another outfit which was more or less just selling, and that was actually, no, I was the first, when Hitler came to Austria, I worked in that outfit where with knitted stuff. I was the first person who was fired, not because I was Jewish, A, and B, because I was a Czech citizen. So I was the first one who was fired. It was not a very pleasant time at that time in Vienna. Even we were a little bit protected as Czech citizens. We didn't have to do a lot of, like especially the men, you know, you probably heard stories about how they raided coffee houses and so, or picked people up from the street, from the houses, and they had to clean the streets. There were no stories that really happened. I have seen it with my own eyes, only they never approached. I wore a little Czech flag, and that maybe saved me of doing some dirty work.
If I can go back just a few years, did you belong to any youth organizations
yes.
in Vienna?
I belong to Blau-Weiß and Menorah, Maccabi, and Maccabi was sport, gymnastics. Always the big thing was end of the season. There was a show with gymnastic, and afterwards was a big dance. And Blau-Weiß and Menorah, that was young people got together, and we made hikes on the weekends, sometimes overnight. We slept in tents, and it was a very clean situation was a different time, like it's nowadays. You know, it was lots of fun, but there was not too much pairing going on. You know, we were a bunch of girls and a bunch of boys, and we had fun. There was competition in cooking outside, and somebody had to be the judge. Then we went swimming and canoeing, all kinds of things. Or we went together to a theater performance or concert. It was it gave young people something to do, to learn a little bit.
Did you associate with non-Jews as well?
Yes, I lived in a district where we were maybe in a class with 30 people. We were only 5 Jewish, there were not mixed classes. There were boys' schools and girls' schools at that time. I don't know how it's today. And there were about 5 girls in one class, and we had our religious education. We got twice a week. A rabbi, which was also a teacher, taught us to read and history, everything. And we were always a few schools brought together for that, because there were not enough children in one school, and also maybe 2 grades together. We were classified just like any other subject. It was not volunteer, it was a thing you had to take. The only thing, like Catholics had their religious education in the morning like all other subjects. Only Protestant and Jewish had their religious education in the afternoon.
Anschluss 1938.
Yes.
What were you doing up until this time, months before?
Before the
annexation?
Anschluss?
And what were your feelings when Hitler entered?
You know, we heard a little bit about it, about Germany, but we didn't want to believe it. You know, like it's till it hits you. Like where I lived, around the corner in the next block was that famous brown house in Vienna where not the SS, SA, were at home, you know, the man with the brown shirt, which you see probably in movies and television things. And the day it was proclaimed, the famous Anschluss, they were already in the evenings singing and exercising in front of our place. We used to live, it was a little square with a park, and behind that park they started to exercise and showed off their things. And the next day when we went to our jobs, there was not much talking about it. You know, it was like if somebody hits you with something on your head. Somehow it took a few days before we realized what's happening.
Did you feel that there was any future
At that,
for your
no,
family?
we saw the right away to go out of Austria. For us, it was the natural thing. We said right away we go to Czechoslovakia. But lots of my friends who had nobody outside, and their parents had stores and businesses, all kinds of situations. Nobody wanted to leave everything. They thought it won't happen to them. And if somebody told them, you better go when you can, they didn't want to listen. Unfortunately, they lost everything. If they would have gone and could save their lives, this way they lost everything and their lives too. There are so many situations. Like I had relatives, like cousins, who were at that time abroad. They were in France, one of my cousins. One was already established there, and his brother came to visit him. And because his mother was still in Vienna, he went back, and everybody tried to hold him, said, it's suicide if you go. Soon he came, they arrested him, he went to Dachau. Fortunately, he came out again. You know, everybody had some kind of connections. Not everybody, but lots of people which could get people out of camps, like in Austria. It was a very scary situation. Maybe we were fortunate because we had our Czech citizenship, and it didn't hit us this way.
What kind of anti-Jewish legislation did you face in Prague, if any?
Not too much in Prague. I wasn't so long in Prague. You know, we came 38, and a few years. At that time, like where I lived in that apartment building, there were mostly Jewish tenants. Czechoslovakia was not as much, there were not as many Jewish people living, I would say, in Prague, like in Vienna, in Slovakia, Hungary. There was a heavier Jewish population than in Prague.
Did you ever have to wear a yellow star?
Oh,
or?
sure. I wore a yellow star, but I had it with domes put on. So in case I didn't want to be seen with a star, I just ripped the domes off and put my purse over. And when you are young, you are more daring. There was a curfew. You had to be at 8 o'clock at home. And if I was somewhere visiting and it was past 8, so didn't want to be seen with a star on the street.
How did it come about that you were deported to Thereseinstadt?
The Thereseinstadt. Well, the transports were going maybe already a year, like there was an awful job for the man who had to bring the news to the families. And we young people, like I volunteered to help older people to pack their suitcases when they were called in the transport to go to Theresien. It was pitiful, but I felt I had to do something to help. And as I said before, the first one was my grandmother, and then my mother, and then I went. There were people always, one was helping the other, like if in an apartment building, if somebody was called, the other ladies in the house, they baked like stuff what they could take along, and everybody tried to give them something. Everybody had too many things anyway, but everybody had that feeling, I have to help them. At that time, there were things already rationed. You didn't have too much sugar or fat to make many things, but people rather sacrificed their stuff if somebody left to give them a little bit extra.
What were the conditions like at Thereseinstadt?
Well, Thereseinstadt was once a lot of military things were going on in Thereseinstadt, and there were caserns. Two were men's, about two were women's, and there were bunk beds, and the people slept like you probably have seen in TV movies and things. Then there were private homes where each room was stuffed with people. The worst thing was there were not too many washrooms, and the lineup was enormous, and people got sick. It was a very, very sad situation in the housing in Theresien.
Were families together, or?
Well, they had a separate building for children, like in a kibbutz, and very few, like the top, how should I say, which were in charge. They had maybe a room where they could live a family together. Not too many.
What was your job in
Oh,
Thereseinstadt?
I
Or
was,
jobs?
oh yes, I worked like for the employment office, and I had, my job was to recruit women for peeling potatoes. You know, there were lots of potatoes necessary to feed so many people, and every kitchen had separate and caserne where I was working from. There were mostly older ladies, and which were awfully nice. Most of them were from Germany, and everybody tried to do me little favors. They thought like I'm the boss. I felt really bad, like I always saw in all the older ladies, my mother or my grandmother. And I never pushed them. I never said, that's not fast enough, or the potatoes are not clean enough. Oh, they did it, it was all right with me. And that was a little episode I can tell you. I worked also sometimes, you know, we were sent to work outside the ghetto, and I naturally, lots of us got some lice, and we knew leaves from nut trees were supposed to help to get rid of the lice. So when we were outside, when I have seen a tree with a nut tree, I thought, well, now I can get a few leaves. I always wore some kind of a sack. You never knew what you can find to put stuff in. But a German soldier, he was quite a big shot. He seen me taking the leaves. And he roared and said, what do you think you are doing? So I told him, I just want a few leaves. Is it such a crime? And he said, yes. Imagine if all the people in Thereseinstadt would go and rip the leaves from the trees, what would be left? For that crime what I did, they put me in jail. But I wasn't very long. I was a couple of days. The whole, you know, lots of people knew that I was in jail, and they came to visit me outside there. It was a funny thing. But after 2 days, they got me out, like from my job, my employment office at the big wheel got me out after 2 days. But it could have ended just that, you know, next to Thereseinstadt there was a real prison. It was called Die Kleine Festung, and I could have ended there, could have been hanged, who knows, you know, like things like that could lead to bigger things, just a few nut leaves. You know, today when I think about it, I have to laugh. It wasn't so funny when I was there. But Thereseinstadt wasn't too bad. We lived, you know, after when I went to Auschwitz, and I've seen the difference. In Thereseinstadt, first of all, we met our husbands. We could talk, could be with them for a little while. And people with children, they could see the children. Like families could get together. And we, after we were in Auschwitz and then in Germany, we always said we wouldn't mind to live till the end of our lives in Theresine. You know, then we realized how much easier life was there. We had coffee houses. You know, Theresine was supposed to be something special when people came from the Red Cross. I think they took them to Theresine, the Germans, to show them how good they treat the people who are there. Theresine was more or less, people came from all over Europe, and from there they were sent again back to other camps, like to Poland, to different Treblinka, all over. There was a Durchzugslager, something like that.
Were all of the inhabitants Jewish in the camp?
They were Jewish naturally, but there were some people who had lived their whole life as Gentiles. They had maybe one Jewish grandmother or grandfather, and the Germans declared they are Jews. And they had nothing in common with Jewish people. They felt very out of place, and it was tough enough for Jewish people, but it was much harder for people who lived their whole life as Gentiles. All of a sudden they are pushed into Jewish neighborhood. You know, like they had to live as a Jew where they had no idea holidays or stuff like that.
Did you celebrate holidays?
Yes.
Mm.
We, I don't, like I am quite sure there were no matzah for Pesach, but the high holidays was something, it's very hard to describe, a very moving feeling you had. Most people were, only half the families, either they passed away or they were sent already to transports to Poland, and everybody was hoping for an end. It took an awful lot out. Like, I'm not a very religious person. How should I say? I'm proud to be Jewish. I believe in lots of things, but I never observed too much the kosher kitchen. Like, it was very hard for girls which were used to have a kosher house. In Theresine it was impossible, and they suffered quite a bit. For me, I didn't care as long I had something to eat.
Were Orthodox Jews able to keep kashrut? No one.
No. We are glad if you had a piece to put in your mouth.
How long did you stay at Thereseinstadt?
I guess a year. I came in August, was it 42? Yes. And December 43, I went. I was supposed to go in September, but I got diphtheria. That saved my life. It saved mine and my husband's life. We are already, we were registered in the transport, and because I had the disease, and it was contagious naturally, so the German took me out. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here, because the whole transport went in the gas chamber.
In Birkenau?
In Birkenau.
Yeah.
That was when we were December transport, and then in May came another one from Thereseinstadt. And when the May transport came, the September transport went into the gas chamber.
So
that was very, very, it was the only time when I really lived with it. You could hear the screaming, and you could smell the burnt flesh and hair. We were, Birkenau was a family lager. We were men, women, and children all in one place together. The children stayed with the mothers, and the men had separate barracks. I was in Birkenau on the block where only young, fairly good-looking girls were chosen. There were no old people on that barrack where I was, and we had music playing the whole day from morning till night. They had naturally a very easy job. That were musicians who came to that camp from Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, all really who played in big bands, and there they played for the Germans, so just amused them. And it wasn't, after a while you didn't hear them playing anymore. It didn't bother you. You didn't enjoy it. And Birkenau, I worked in the weberei. We were doing weaving bands which were used for carrying a rifle. And it was a strange thing. Naturally, they tried to encourage us to work faster and faster. We got our ration soup around between 10 and 11. Before the soup, you worked really fast. After you were fat, you didn't work much anymore. Your capacity slowed down. I don't understand why, but that's how it was. And in the morning, we got some dark, warm liquid. We didn't know if it was tea or coffee. Sometimes instead of drinking it, we washed with it. It was the only warm thing we could have. When we were brave, we went to there were barracks with pipes and water, naturally only cold water. And when we washed ourselves, it was smoke all over because it was so cold. Our bodies were warm and then cold water. But we all tried to keep clean as much as we could. The food was very little. In the morning we had that warm liquid, then we got a soup, and in the afternoon we got maybe a slice of bread and a piece of margarine or something like that. It was less than the minimum a body needed. In Birkenau, my husband didn't survive. He really starved to death. Somehow it hit me, and on the other hand, I said to myself, he doesn't have to suffer anymore. Sometimes we women try to give our husbands a little piece of the bread rations we had. Didn't help them too much. It did us more harm, but that's what we tried to do. Like he passed away, it was in June, and in July we were sent to Germany, first to Hamburg. It was kind of relief to get out of Auschwitz. You know, whatever you have seen in movies and television, in real life it was far worse. I remember when we arrived there.
In Birkenau?
No, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I had him, you know, with my husband. We had a tin of sardines and a tin of sweetened condensed milk, you know. And my husband had a very good watch. He changed that watch for a cigarette. You know, the people, the Polacks who were there, they knew when a new transport came that people had sinks. And we ate the whole tin of sardines and the tin of the sweetened condensed milk. That we didn't get sick after that, till today I don't believe. But I knew they took everything away from us. I remember when we we went in the trains where they transport normally animals. And somehow everybody packed their belongings. And then we had beautiful eider downs. Somehow my husband didn't got the eider downs in the train with us, and I was upset. I thought the world will come to an end. I didn't know that I didn't realize that I never would see it anyway. It never would have come with me. But but the few things you had, you were holding on it, and you thought, without it, how can I survive? Survived without it pretty good.
Do you remember ever being either physically or sexually abused in Birkenau?
Not sexually. Also not in Birkenau, no, not even physically, no. There were girls who got friendly with the Germans in exchange for food, naturally. But no, I stayed away from this kind of things. I never, the only thing, when I was in Birkenau, I had steady temperatures. I don't know. There were no medicaments anyway. The doctors which were with us, I say, I can't do nothing anyway. You know, somehow Mother Nature helped. Somebody made it and somebody didn't. It's, you know, the biggest thing when women were, oh, let's say between 40 and 50, they tried to get their birthday changed. So they are younger because everybody was afraid when there was a selection. You know, a selection is left, right, and the people, it was an awful feeling, you know, were naked, not a stitch on you, and you didn't know, are you going to be gassed or will you live? But then we got some clothes and life went on.
What did you do to keep your spirits up, if it was possible?
Like
Birkenau.
in Birkenau, for instance, it wasn't too bad because the family, Birkenau was a family lager, and you were with your husband or your children or your parents or with relatives. There it was all right. But once we came to Germany, like the transport were separated, women and men. Men were sent to one place and the women were sent to another place. And there wherever we were cooking and making plans what delicacies we would do, and because we didn't have enough to eat, so we let our fantasy work. And every girl came with some special things, and then everybody was talking what they will do when they come back. And then somebody said, what are you talking? You are coming back. None of us will come back. We can't survive. There were always pessimism and optimism. It's, I was a little bit kind of melancholic. Like I knew my husband was dead. The others didn't. The others were thinking their husbands are alive. Most of them were dead also already, but they didn't, you know, they planned. And I knew my mother couldn't have survived a situation like that. And I thought my brothers, they will be in the war, and war is something terrible too, and they can't survive. So I was always on my mind, I'm all alone, I have nobody anymore. But somehow, when we went, like in Birkenau, we didn't have to go too much outside because I worked in the Weberei, to weaving these things, so I was inside. And I didn't feel that winter too much. Somehow, maybe because I was younger, I took it easier. And it's but when we came from Birkenau, they sent us to Hamburg. Hamburg, it was again, you lived under normal people, and the whole situation was different. It was better, definitely better. We worked, we did clean-up jobs in bombed buildings, and they took us with boats from Hamburg to some places, 5 o'clock in the morning. And a strange thing, at that time, Germany was bombed quite heavily, but they never throwed bombs places where we used to be. We got also a little bit more food in Germany, and when we walked on, in the bomb districts, women, when they passed us, sometimes gave us some food, or we went to buildings, knocked at the doors, and asked if we could have something to eat. Sometimes we got something. Sometimes it was a little bit a hot situation. If some soldier or SS opened you the door, boy, were we fast to run away. But you were always trying to get somewhere food. And
So we should stop here.
Yeah.
Take a break, girls.
Great.
You're in.
Okay. How is it that you made it to Hamburg from Birkenau?
like there was the selection, as I told you before, and one left, one right. The one which were chosen to live went to Hamburg. And in Hamburg, we did clean up jobs in the bombed houses. Once we found a whole bunch of material, kind of a gingham. Was a little bit burnt on one side. And in a situation like that, like I guess in the army, you have to have a body, and in our situation, everybody also needed a body. And I was with one girl who used to have at home a shop for the fancy lingerie. And she said, you know, we will make brassieres. The girls, we go for it like wild. And say, okay. Somehow we were friendly with one of the foremen, and she asked him if maybe he could get us a couple needles when we have a hole that we could fix our clothes. So he brought us a couple needles. I don't know where she, maybe he brought her scissors too or something like that, because she had to cut them. And the girls were wild for it. You know, the girls rather didn't eat a day and gave us their ration, and we made them in return a bra. Whenever there was a attack, like when the bombs, and we were pushed in bunkers, we had in our pockets always our work, and we were sewing. We had the needles, but we had no thread. The thread we got, we pulled out always a thread from that material, and with that we sew. I don't know, buttons. Somehow we managed to get buttons from clothes which we had. We cut a button off and put it on. But it gave us a little bit extra food, and we didn't feel bad because when the others were sleeping, we were sewing. But it was okay. And from Hamburg, then we went to a camp one was Neugraben, and another one was Thereseinstadt. One was beautiful. It was in the middle of a forest, very like a cottage you see sometimes now on TV when you see a movie. And we were not too many people for such a camp. And we had to work outside again and clean up jobs, and once again Lady Luck struck me. Normally I never would have walked away from a job which we were supposed to do. And I don't know what came over me. I walked away, and the building we were cleaning up, one wall fell in and buried the 4 girls who were there. I was the 5th. When they found the 4 girls, they were screaming and hysterical because everybody knew that I was with them. And all of a sudden, I come from the other side, walking alive. That shook me up. I don't know, I guess.
Was that the closest you had come to?
I would say
Death.
that was the closest I came ever. Like when I had typhus, I was not, my brain didn't work too well anymore. That was close too, but we were not. Then we were in one camp which was bombed once when we were at work, and there were only very few, and none of them was really badly hurt. And shortly after, we were transported to our last stop Bergen Belsen. That was really awful. There was, the people died like flies. There were so many transports from all over came, it was already the end for the Germans, and they got panicky. Some, girl, like women which were in charge to watch us, were thinking if they shouldn't put on our clothes to save their lives. And in Bergen-Belsen, we were liberated on the 15th of April, 1945. The British, and they were naturally awfully nice to us. The problem was they gave us food which our stomach didn't, was too much. On one hand, we couldn't resist when we have seen food, it was too rich, and lots of girls didn't make it. I got typhus, and I spoke a little bit English, not very much. I learned before in Prague and already in Vienna, but when you learn at school, in real life you can't use it very much. But somehow that one English woman which came with the army and looked after us, she was thrilled when she could hear somebody tries to speak English to her. And she was awfully nice, and she brought me some clean clothes, I think, or something like that, which was very nice.
What was your appearance like at the time?
Well, I was down to about 70 pounds. Very thin.
Yeah.
I didn't have no, and they opened like warehouses with clothes, and we girls were after it like crazy. We got uniform jackets and men's shirts and shoes, and everybody grabbed. It's a funny thing. Through the whole time, you only had one thing, to take something, to get something. And not long after, they came in April, and maybe July, they shipped us back to Prague. On the trip there, I got jaundice, and I was more on the other side, more dead than alive. I know that the girls, they're always looking if I'm still alive. But I made it to Prague, and I naturally had no idea that my brother could be on the station. And we were, everybody was, I wasn't really at home in Prague. I didn't know too many people, and everybody who was from Czechoslovakia knew somebody, and people disappeared and called and I didn't know where to go, what to do. I knew one thing: I don't want to go in a hospital, and I don't want to go in any other institution. I was sitting there and had no idea what the next hour will be. And there I see a soldier in the British battle dress and talking with girls, and he was asking about me. Like when I got married, at that time, I don't know, we still could write to each other, and they knew my married name. And all the lists which were made when in Belsen, for instance, the British made lists, and they came to the States, and my relatives found me on a list in New York. At that time, I had cousins also in the army, which were stationed in Germany, and everybody tried to make arrangements to pick me up, like to get some truck or something. And they notified my brother, came with the Czech army back to Czechoslovakia, and he knew, like in Czechoslovakia, they also got the list, the people who are returning. And he found me on one of the lists that I was supposed to return on that and that day. Well, he asked about me, and the girl said, well, there she is. He looked, turned around, and I didn't think twice. I thought, I don't know who that could be. And then one of the girls said, that's her. And somehow we got together, and he got fat, I got skinny, so we naturally didn't recognize. You know, he was in army uniform, and I was in clothes from that warehouse in Bergen Belsen, very elegant. And I had a blanket with me, and they said, that's very precious. I can't leave. I said, leave the bloody thing here. I said, that's all what I have. I can't leave it here. I have to take it. And we went to a friend's house. I had a bath. I got clean clothes. And my first meal was cream of wheat. I was yellow like a canary, but I said, no, I don't go to a hospital, I don't want to see a doctor. It came alone, it will go away. I don't know, I went to a doctor naturally, and I got some medication, but I didn't have to go to a hospital. And it's amazing, in a few hours, I was a completely different person. And I just pretty fast, you know, there were times where I had the feeling, whenever I came to a big place, I always had the feeling the walls are coming down on me. And it took me a long time to put on some weight. I only had one desire, to get fat as anything. I couldn't. And all my relatives from the States sent me parcels. I got clothes and beauty things like lipsticks and powder and coffee, rice, you know, things which they didn't have in Czechoslovakia. With that stuff I could change. Then I got wool, and somebody was weaving me materials, so I could get clothes made. It was didn't take too long to get into normal circulation. You know, like with I got quite a bit of coffee and tea and all the things what they didn't have in Czechoslovakia, and for that I could change for eggs and meat and butter and whatever. And life was pretty good. Then I met my second husband, like he lost his wife and child and his whole family. And he had planned to come to Canada already when the Germans occupied Czechoslovakia. But because he had he didn't want to go alone, like he had his wife and child and his parents and his grandmother and his aunt, and he came with a whole bunch of passports to the authorities to get an exit visa. And when they have seen that whole bunch, they put it always in a drawer, and he never got out. But his stuff, like his furniture and a whole sink, came to Canada, but naturally people thought he never would come for it. So it was sold. One of his friends had a piece, like a wall unit. It was beautiful. And he came, and my husband, somehow it looks familiar to me. He said, yes, I got it from your furniture. If you want it, you can have it for the same amount what I paid for it. What a chutzpah. But at that time we were living in a little house. We wouldn't have room for it anyway. I said, no, you can have it, keep it. And that was with everything. You know, like he sent some money to some relatives. And when we came, we always thought we have a little bit money here to start off. And he sent him such a list, but he paid all for him. And on the end of the line was a big zero. But things like that didn't get, you know, we lost so much, so things like that didn't bother us. We came just with our suitcases because we are stupid enough to put some old bank books into a case which was supposed to be mailed to us once we were here. And the authorities confiscated the whole thing because they thought we want to smuggle something. You know, old useless bank books. I don't know why they put them in sentimental value or something. Yeah. It had no money in it, no value whatsoever. But that was the reason. So, but we survived anyway. At first we were in Brantford. My husband's family, they were farmers, and they had farms around Brantford. And we came just when they were harvesting hay. He helped them a little bit, and they were very nice. At first they gave us a little house, like a hired man's house. It was, I remember, the floor was a little bit going on a slant. When I washed the floor, the water ran right outside, so I didn't have to dry it. And we had no stove or fridge. We had a little hot plate. Things like, you know, we didn't have to have everything right away. And I started to work at first. I did alterations for a dress shop. And my husband worked at Massey Ferguson. And we lived with relatives on their farm, and then we got a little house in Brantford. Some, you know, the houses at that time were maybe $6,000, and your down payment was, I don't know, maybe $500 or $1,000, something like that. And we got that, and we moved to Brantford. But, you know, a funny thing I must tell you. When we came, our first stop was Prescott in Canada, because there was a family from the same place like my husband's parents used to live. And when, before we came to Prescott, we flew to Montreal. And my husband said took a taxi. We had a few dollars, not much, to take us to the best hotel in the city. I nearly fainted. I said, are you crazy? You are stupid. If you go in a cheap hotel, you have to pay when you go in. But if you go in a better hotel, you can pay later. So we took at that time it was the Laurentian. It doesn't exist anymore in Montreal. It was close to the railway station. And we took the phone book and looked under Jewish. And we found a few places. First place we found was some burning thing, you know, Kebra Kadisha, something like that. Anyway, they told us how to go there. They gave us some money, and they asked us how much we need, and we said, well, we have to pay the hotel room, and we would like to have something to eat, and train fare to Prescott. So they gave us the thing, and he said, you see, now we can pay the hotel, we have some money. And when we came, and we went to Prescott, and from Prescott we got again some money. And when we were in Brantford, then we sent back the money when we made a little bit. You know, we told them we just wanted as a loan, we don't want no charity. We are young and we are able to work. But people were, you know, willing to, they gave us money for bus fare and things like that. You know, and
People were very helpful in
yes,
Canada?
yes, I would say, starting from when we arrived in Sydney, Nova Scotia, from when we flew from, I didn't tell you the story about how we got out of Prague. We were booked on all, for 3 days, every plane which goes out. And my husband's brother was in office in the Czech army, and he went without passport. You know, he flew with his wife, and our name was on the blacklist. That meant that we wouldn't get an exit visa. And my husband knew how to handle people. And one of the men who were taking the passports to the man who was supposed to sign them, he got friendly with him, and I told him, look, I don't know where my passport is, but if you find my passport and he doesn't know what passport he signs, he put his signature on, you give me the passport and you come to my house and you can take from my apartment whatever you want. You know, we don't need it. Yeah, when we can go out. And when we left, we had some friends going with us to the airport, and we told them, when you see our plane in the air, then send cables to the States that we are on our way. We nearly didn't make it, because stupid me, I had a photo in my suitcase of Masaryk, father and son. It was I always admired both Masaryks, and it was, if I would have hit the wrong man who searched my suitcase, we wouldn't have made it. But I hit the right man, and he looked at the picture, he looked at me, put it back, closed my suitcase, and said, "Good luck to you." And Canada, in Brantford, I opened my own little, like, we bought a house, and I put an ad in a newspaper. Viennese dressmaker is opening a salon or something like that. And I got a few customers. At that time, you know, you could buy a dress for $5 already. And I charged $15 just to make a dress. And I said, well, I am used to do it the old way, and I put a lot of work in, and the people paid it. And it kept us over water. My husband worked at Massey Ferguson. I worked in a meat packing place for a short while too in Brantford before I started to sew. But it was, I didn't like it very much. I had to inject hems with a salt solution, and it was naturally like in a fridge. The whole thing was very, very cold. And I complained. I said, I'm too cold, I can't do the job. So they put me outside. There I had to do some other job with sausages. There was, again, so much water. I had to stay always in rubber boots. I didn't last too long there. And we, you know, the European one looks like a 7 here. And we were allowed to get food in the packing house for much cheaper than you buy in the stores. So I ordered 1 pound of butter. But I made a European one. It looked like a 7. And I looked for a little parcel, and there I see a big parcel. I said, what's that? I don't need so much. I only need 1. So they showed me the list for, like, we had to fill out something that I put 7 on. I learned fast.
Do you have any children?
I had, no, I have 2 children, but when we came, they were born here in Toronto. From Brantford, we came to Toronto. First I worked in some factory on Spadina, and then we started our cleaning business. My husband was working on permanent pasture, and we had an old car which broke down, and some friend of his said, I have somebody in the cleaning business, I introduce you to him. And he said, sure, come and I give you a job. But he was allergic to cleaning fluid. And he said, that's all right, Henry. Look around. I want to make you to my manager. And at that time, we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. He asked him, how much does a manager, maybe we made around $30, $35 a week. How much does a manager makes in your $100. You know what? I will go on my own. Then they said, "Are you crazy? You are not a Schneider. You don't know anything about the cleaning business. What will you do?" Because I'm not I don't know anything. I will do all right. Don't worry. And there was a fellow in that outfit. He said, "Henry, I go with you into partnership if you want to go on your own." But then he got cold feet. His family said, "Are you crazy? You will start with a greener." So we rented already a place. He said, "My family doesn't want me to go with you." Okay, it's all right. So I started to go to one friend, and they showed me how to press. It took me maybe an hour to press a pair of pants, but I learned a little bit. But we bought machinery and we hired a presser, and gradually we had a little store, then we took the next store, we made a bigger store, and then our first daughter was born. That was 54. And a year later, the second one was born, 55. But I still went with the carriage to the store. Only when the second one was born, we moved to Don Mills. And we said I should stay at home with the children till they are a little bit bigger. And didn't stay very long. It was, I had some babysitters who looked after the kids a couple days a week, and my husband wanted me to get back into, that I get a hold of the business again. I said, okay. And 57, he passed away. I had no choice. I had to take the business over, and it was hard. I knew the business quite well, but when I came, there was a whole bunch of unpaid bills. All I had was $100, which my husband had in his pocket. We had a small life insurance once he had. We needed a machine, so he traded the life insurance for a machine. And I had no idea that he had a heart condition. On account of his heart condition, he couldn't get another insurance. He tried all kinds of things, and but I survived. Like strange people came and offered me money, and the bank manager, whenever I need something, don't hesitate to come to me, and it worked. That we started with one little store, and we added to it. I had 4 stores, which each was operating as a plant. My girls helped me quite a bit. And they were at school. After school they came, and Saturday they came, and they hardly could look over the counter, but they knew the business from the front to the back, and We managed.
Have you told your children about your experiences?
Sure, they knew. I didn't talk too much about it with them. It's when they were older, then they understood more. They were asking questions, and I took them to Israel, where we were together with friends which were with me in camp too, and they knew quite a bit. Like especially my younger daughter went to Israel. At first she was a year in a kibbutz, there where she got the taste of Israel, and she was quite good. When she came, she didn't know one word of Hebrew, and after a year, she made up her mind to go into linguistic. She started here in Toronto, and went 1 year to U of T, and then she went back to Tel Aviv and studied 3 years there, and they talked her into to go to apply to make her PhD. She applied to a few universities in the States and chose MIT, where she is now. And my other daughter studied in Guelph nutrition, and she is a dietitian in Princess Margaret.
Have you attended any Holocaust conferences?
I was
recently?
in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a couple of years ago? 3 years ago? Which it was quite a moving thing. A little bit, I was disappointed that I didn't meet people with whom I was together, only a few, not too many. But
most were living in Poland?
yeah,
Most
Poland, there was a lot of people from Hungary and Poland. Not, I met people from Toronto, which were in the camp, which I knew anyway, which came there. And
what are your feelings about the recent trials of Holocaust deniers, Zundel, Keekstra? How do you feel about all this?
furious, unbelievable. Sometimes I could choke them. You know, for us who went through all that, how can anybody say it didn't exist?
Okay, I'd like to thank you very much. Just going to show some photographs of your family. Okay.
That's my father. He was in the Austrian-Hungarian army. That's my mother. That's a picture with my brothers and my mother. Maybe I was about 12 years old. My brothers are 6 and 7 years older, so they were in their teens.
Mm-hmm. This was in Vienna.
That was in Vienna.
Right. Okay.
That
And what is this?
that is money which we got in Thereseinstadt. We couldn't buy very much with it. Like, for instance, mustard or something which would be without coupons in Prague.
Okay.
That is our first thing, like when we returned after the camp, we got some kind of identification or one official thing, repatriation document or something like that.
Okay.
There are girls, we were together through all camps, and they were celebrating in Prague. It shows they all adjusted pretty well to normal life. Doesn't show. And that is our first store, Corbis Cleaners, which was unwealthy, doesn't exist anymore. It's torn down. That's where we started our business. That's my first husband, that's my husband, Fritz Mandowski, who died in Birkenau. That is in Prague. My husband, Henry Ritter, father of my 2 girls. That was the wedding of my brother in front of the old Neue Schul synagogue in Prague. That's with my kids after my husband passed away in in a cottage. We went in summer. There are my 2 girls at my daughter's wedding.
What are their names?
Carrie wedding, and Betsy was the maid of honor.
Okay. Okay. Talk.
Yeah.
Who's this?
That is Betsy's office at MIT, and she got greetings from some people on her computer. And that is Carrie when she had
Good
a
stuff.
talk about nutrition. She is the dietitian in Princess Margaret, and that was taken in Princess Margaret.
Okay.